When I first found out I was pregnant, I knew that abortion was the only option that I really could handle at that time. I felt completely overwhelmed and terrified. I knew that there was no way that I could raise a child, so I really did feel like abortion was the only possible outcome in this situation. I knew that time was running out, so I did go into the clinic and made the appointment to see the doctor. Sitting outside the abortion clinic in my car, I decided to Google the pregnancy center. When I went to the pregnancy center, I had told the ladies my decision to go to the abortion clinic. They knew the situation and they knew what I was worried about. They talked me through different options of what I could possibly do. They were very welcoming and very warm. They did offer me a free ultrasound. At first, I didn't want to take it because I knew that would probably solidify a decision, but in the end, I did. When you do hear the first heartbeats of your baby, as a mom, it makes it real, it makes it true, it makes you realize that there is another life. It's not just you. That was ultimately what helped me choose to keep my daughter and to choose life. They gave me strength, they gave me hope, and ultimately my daughter is here because of them.
When you give, your gift helps little ones like me.
I appreciate the opportunity here. That video is a video that an organization called Choose Life Marketing creates for pregnancy centers. And while that woman isn't someone who actually came to our center, she's a woman like many who have come to our center. And we don't have ultrasound at our place, but there's a place right down the road from us that does. So when a woman comes in and is looking for an ultrasound, we can refer her there. And if she's looking for housing, they can refer women to us. So it's a win-win deal. There's about 2,500 pregnancy centers throughout the country, and everybody has a little different part to play. So we're grateful for the opportunity we can partner with other pregnancy centers to serve women and men in our community. Also thankful to partner with churches like yourselves as we serve the Lord. The rose that's up here is a rose that we've sent out to all of our churches, and we ask churches to put that rose out when a baby is rescued from abortion. And sometimes we get the opportunity to put the rose out when a baby that was rescued from abortion is actually born. And sometimes we find out way later that a baby that was born, that was rescued, is now 11 years old. And that's what this rose stands for. The other day, a girl came into our office and she was looking for financial help because she's pregnant again. And she said, "I've been here before." And I said, "You have?" And she said, "Yes. I was here 11 years ago, and I was strongly thinking about abortion, and the lady that talked to me encouraged me to wait and to not give in to fear and to not make a permanent decision based on temporary circumstances." And she said, and I went and talked to the father of the baby, and he encouraged me that we should keep the baby. And now we're married, and we're having our third child. But she said, "I just want you to know that 11 years ago, your people made a difference." So what a blessing to hear that. And thankful that we've been doing this now for 30 years, and some of the babies that were rescued back then are now grown and have families of their own, and just really grateful for that. So God's provision for Metro Women's Center started 30 years ago when people like you began to make a difference. Abortion does end generations, and I want to tell you today why I know that that's true. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. When John Newton put that internal rhyme together for the Amazing Grace song, it wasn't purely for poetic reasons. He understood grace to mean God's unmerited favor to lost souls. On May 10th, 1748, when Newton was the captain of a ship that was caught in a violent storm, he experienced what he would later refer to as his great deliverance. When all seemed lost and the ship would surely sink, he recorded his prayer in his journal, "Lord, have mercy on me." At that point in his life, God had become everything to him. He had placed his physical and spiritual future in the Lord's hands. Later, in his reflected on what had brought him through that turbulent storm and that grace had begun to work for him. My own turbulent journey through life, unplanned pregnancy, and subsequent spiritual renewal began when I was 18 and pregnant. I was terrified. I hadn't been raised a strong Catholic family, and I knew that this could not be happening to me. I had been taught the truth about life being sacred. I was part of a national Right to Life group. I had even bought a little $5 bracelet to show just how pro-life I was. But like many women experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, I panicked. Maybe you can relate to some of those feelings when facing hard situations in your life. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to turn. I felt like Newton on that ship being tossed to and fro. Like him, I was searching for some sort of deliverance, some sort of rescue. Fortunately, in my case, I sought the wrong kind of deliverance from my pregnancy crisis. I allowed fear to drive my choices, and I had the first of what would eventually be 3 abortions. I assumed wrongly that each time I chose the deliverance of abortion that my life would be better. That, my friends, was a lie. 3 years later, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, broke, homeless, and pregnant for the 4th time. Again, I started searching for deliverance via abortion. Thankfully, I accidentally called an adoption agency in my search for an abortion clinic. The woman on the phone had a sweet voice and offered me an option I had never considered before, the option of adoption. I am saddened today to think that at the time of my other pregnancies, selfishness and fear blinded me to the adoption option. As I learned about the option of adoption, I began to feel hopeful instead of afraid. For the first time, I started to consider the other person in my crisis, my unborn child. The more I learned, the more I became filled with a sense of drive and purpose. I was on a mission to find a family for my son. God allowed me to find a family, and I chose to include them in my birth plan. In March of 1982, with his adoptive mother as my labor companion, my son was born. His adoptive mom cut the umbilical cord, and together we cried and rejoiced that he was finally here. She, because she finally got to be a mom, and me, because labor was over. We named our son Nicholas William, after my father and his adoptive father. During the hospital time, I spent time with Nick, saying hello to him in the special ways a mother does, letting him know that I loved him, checking out his fingers and his toes. As I spent time with him, I pondered the fact that God had allowed life to emerge from a place where death had previously reigned. Even while I loved him very much, I had a strong sense that he was not totally mine, but that he belonged to his new family. I knew what I was choosing was right for him, but leaving the hospital without him was the most difficult day of my life. There is a saying that says choosing to be a mother is choosing to have your heart go walking around outside of your body. Leaving the hospital that day felt like that exactly. It felt like my heart would stop beating entirely. Over time, that deep grief has subsided, replaced by peace and thankfulness. Someone once said, "You can't dry clean grief away. It must be washed away with tears." When we love deeply, we grieve deeply. As a birth mother, I had grown to love my son, but I also knew that he was where he needed to be. That picture that you see behind me is my son today in the red shirt. He's just turned 39. The reason that I say abortion ends generations is that if I would have succeeded in aborting him, the little guy standing next to him, his son, who's now 12, would not be here. I wish I could say that after giving birth to my son, my life turned out completely around, but I still had work to do. I had received deliverance from my pregnancy crisis, but through the wonderful adoption option, but I still needed spiritual deliverance from my sin. Shortly after Nick was born, I met a man who I thought was cute, and I started dating him. Well, God fooled me because that man was a Christian. He began to minister the gospel to me. He shared Romans 3:23 with me, which says, "All have sinned and come short of the glory of God." I read John 3:16, "God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life." I soon began to see the truth about my life from God's perspective. I was a haughty and a proud sinner, and I needed to yield my life to God. Thankfully, I finally yielded to the Lord's leading and received Jesus as my personal Savior. And a bonus, I married that cute guy. Today, my greatest source of strength comes from Romans 8:1, which states, "There is no condemnation to them who are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit." God took the shipwreck of my life and began to change me from the inside out. He delivered me, my son, from abortion because of the option of adoption, and he gave me spiritual rescue I did not deserve. He reminds me periodically of Isaiah 1:18, which says, "Come now, let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins are as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool." There had been a lot of scarlet in my life, but God, through his incredible mercy and his amazing grace, had washed me white as snow. Another incredible gift of mercy in my life is that God allowed me to bear 2 more children. So today my husband and I have 2 grown sons. And to me, that is a great, great gift. So what's the rest of the story, you might say? Why did you share all that with us? Well, I shared all of that with you because I am excited that as a Christian, because I know God's mercy and grace, that I can turn around and share that with other people. 2 Corinthians 5:20 says that we are to be ambassadors, as though God, through us, is making an appeal to other people. And I'm very excited that we can do that at Metro Women's Center. You can do the next slide. So God's provision for Metro Women's Center started 30 years ago, like I said, when people like you started to make a difference. You can do the next one. Our staff, Rochelle and Kim, and I provide direct services to our clients in our Crystal office and at the Amazing Grace home. Many volunteers serve faithfully alongside of our staff, and this year they provided over 400 hours of love and care for our clients, even during the pandemic. You can do the next. At Metro Women's Center, we have 3 goals: to defend life in the womb, to restore lives through biblical and practical education, and to shelter lives at the Amazing Grace home. This year in our Crystal office, we provided direct service to 155 families and answered over 200 calls for help. We encouraged our clients to slow down and to consider all options before making a permanent decision based on temporary circumstances. Some listened and chose life. Others we had to be content to just leave them in God's hands. Metro Women's Center is a small pregnancy care center, and it's one of more than 2,500 across the country. Pregnancy care centers thankfully now outnumber abortion clinics 5-1 in the United States, and all of our services are free. You can do the next slide. Sharing the gospel is a critical part of the work that we do at Metro Women's Center. This year, 40 Bibles were distributed, and 70% of our clients received some form of gospel witness. So during this last fiscal year, we were thrilled when 2 women trusted Christ. We also saw 3 former clients baptized at different local churches. One of the ones that was baptized was a young lady who lived at our Amazing Grace home, and she was born to a mom who used alcohol during her pregnancy, so she was fetal alcohol affected as an adult. She covenanted with God not to drink during her pregnancy so that her child would not have the same outcome that she did. And she gave birth to her baby, and he was drug-free, alcohol-free, and a beautiful little boy. But she was one of the women who recently got baptized, and we also just heard that she has a really nice boyfriend. So we're really excited about that for her future. At Metro Women's Center, we offer alternatives to abortion. We believe that parenting is a loving choice, and some of the ladies that are shown here are women who have chose parenting. The one in the middle, I met her when she was in a drug treatment program, and she has since gone on to parent a couple of children after making an adoption plan for one little girl. The one on this far side, she was living with her mom while she was pregnant, but her mom smoked terribly and she was deathly allergic. So she would come and spend 3 or 4 hours a day at the center just to get away from her mom smoking. But during that time, she got education and information about how to be a good parent to her daughter. The lady on the other side there is also one lady that lived at the Amazing Grace home, and she's doing a great job with her daughter, and now with her son, and now with a daughter. The next slide. We also believe that adoption is a loving choice. The the man and the little girl there, the little girl was the daughter of a young woman who was actually outside of an abortion clinic, and she took a little pamphlet from some of the sidewalk counselors there, and as she went into the clinic for the abortion, she took that pamphlet and went in, and as she was sitting there, she decided that she just couldn't go through with the abortion. So she left, and a couple months later, she called us and said, I need housing, I'm pregnant, I'm Muslim, I can't be at home and have the baby, I need to have housing, and I need to get away from my family. I'm afraid they're gonna harm me because I'm pregnant and single. So we placed her into one of our shepherding homes, and she made an adoption plan for that little. And it's really exciting to hear the outcome of that story. That girl heard the gospel. She went to one of the local churches with the shepherding family. She didn't come to Christ, but she's heard the gospel. So we know God's word doesn't return void. She can't accept any pictures from the family because she still went back to her family, so she can't have the pictures around for fear of the family finding out. So I get the pictures, and then she comes to see me, and we look at the pictures together. And as she's looking at those pictures, one day she was looking at those pictures, and then she looked at me, and she looked at those pictures, and then she looked at me again, and she said, thank you for being there for me. I don't know what would have happened if I would have stayed where I was. It could have been really bad. And she looked at this particular picture, and she said, I'm so glad that he's a good father to my daughter. She won't ever have to experience what I experienced. So sometimes it works, sometimes it's hard, but we know that adoption can be a good option. There's so many stories I could tell you, but I'll just leave it at that. So we are grateful for the option of parenting and for the option of adoption. We have some joys and challenges in this work. Last year, we saw 7 babies' lives spared from abortion. One of the moms was 23 weeks pregnant, and 23 weeks and 6 days, actually, and she had an abortion appointment scheduled. But instead, she came to our office, and her reasons for having the abortion were mostly financial. She already had 3 children at home, and so we were able to meet some of her financial needs and help her to take some of the pressure off. She was a Christian, but she felt like the only way out of her situation was abortion. She had believed the lie that abortion was the way out. Even during the pandemic, as I said, we saw lives spared from abortion, and we saw the gospel impact lives as 2 women came to Christ. Sadly, prior to coming to Metro Women's Center, many clients have experienced abortions. Centers like Matter here in Minnesota. In 2019, there were still nearly 10,000 abortions done in Minnesota, and 40% of those were done via chemical abortion. There you go. We have our second word, which is restoring lives. Educational videos and practical classes on relationships and finances happen at our center. It's kind of fun because sometimes there's men and women in the class, and sometimes there's Muslim women, and so it's just a variety of people that are in the classes. Kim teaches those classes, and the gospel is woven into those sessions so that we can show others that Christ makes a difference in all of the things that we do. Our third word that represents our center is sheltering lives. We have a sheltering life ministry. You can go to the next one. The next one. This is our Amazing Grace home in Fridley. Kim and Joe live there. They are the house parents at the home. The home has a real family atmosphere of love and support. Joe is kind of like a big brother to the ladies offering guidance, challenging them to do things and to do things well. Next slide. He also helps them by fixing flat tires, by scraping the snow off their windows as they're getting prepared for work. And he also serves as a safe guy. Many of these women don't have safe role models of men in their lives. Most of the men in their lives have used them or abused them, haven't really been good role models. So it's great to have an example of Kim and Joe's marriage, too, to show that it's possible to have a healthy relationship in a marriage. Just some pictures of our house. Get to the next one. Since we started the house, that's actually wrong, it's 43 women have lived in the home, and we have had 13 women make adoption plans. The rest have parented. We're grateful for the women that have come. The 2 girls that you see there are now fast friends. They live in the same apartment complex, and they help each other out with childcare and rides, so it's been fun to watch that relationship grow. You know, life goes on for these children and for other children. Sometimes we see results, sometimes we don't. The children that are shown there, the young man over here with the hoodie, his hoodie says, "Humanize my hoodie." When his mom was pregnant, she was thinking about abortion, and she chose life because of our center. He just graduated from high school this year, and at one of our banquets, he and his mom came to the banquet. And after the banquet, as we were going through the envelopes, he had written on the back of one of the envelopes, "Thanks for being my mom's friend so I didn't die." You can bet I still have that envelope. But he's just a really sweet young man. The young man on the far side, he's holding another one of our babies. That young man's mom was in jail when we first met her, and she was pregnant and not sure what she was going to do. Well, he just recently got baptized, and his mom as well, and they're now members at one of our local churches. And the little boy that he's holding is the son of one of the ladies that lived at the Amazing Grace home, and he was actually born at 26 weeks and spent about 3 months in the hospital. And so it's kind of like one of our oldest boys holding our youngest boy. The family in the middle is a family that adopted 2 of our babies through a licensed adoption agency, and it's been really exciting to watch that family grow, and they're now doing foster care as well. So life goes on, hope lives on because of Christ and because of the work that we do. You know, you and I are no different than the men and women that we serve at the center. We're all pilgrims desperately in need of God's grace and hope. This work is humbling and it's hard. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's so worth it. It changes us, and we become more dependent on God and less dependent on ourselves. God does the changing of our clients, and God does the changing of us. We are his instruments, and we have such a great privilege to serve. Thank you for your support, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to see up close and personal how God changes lives. Thank you.